my initial training and my initial background was as an economist. I trained as an economist, as a macroeconomist. I did some graduate work in Canada. I did graduate work in UCD. My first job was as a statistician and analyst in the Department of Health, looking at the kind of health economics, that kind of area, so policy. I then spent 4 years in the central bank, working in an area which eventually spawned a number of the regulatory organisations. My research has really been more about finance and about corporate finance and about the financing of companies. Inter alia, the role of banking and financial institutions is a huge issue there. I've written a couple of textbooks, so in all of that, I think I've got a good grasp. Working in a business school, a good grasp from an academic and ivory tower perspective. Working in a business school, one is faced every day with MBA students or executive education students, people who have a real world problem and who need real world solutions, even if that's coming from an academic discussion. So in doing that, one has to try and always temper as much as possible the pure quill academia with, can this actually be done in practice? Well, I think most ex-bankers probably feel two things. One is they would have a certain degree of vested interest in ensuring that banks don't get vilified, because their managerial labour market may still be in action. They may still want to do consulting, they're going to have to go and play golf, they're part of the system. They're not going to spit in the flag, they're not going to thrash their ex-colleagues. That, doesn't happen. This is a small country. Secondly, they are vested interests by nature of where they've been, and it takes a particular kind of person to want to step outside of their own vested interest. Most people don't feel comfortable, and that's perfectly fine, stepping away from their own vested interests and arguing against their own selfish interests. Now, I'm not saying academics are pure at heart. Our job is, ultimately, we're paid by the state reasonably large, comfortable sums of money to think. We're public servants. And I think we've done this public a bit of service by trying to push out the issues, by trying to analyse them. It's not that we're critical of the government for the sake of criticism. People who signed, for example, the Left 46, they're members of literally every single major party who have signed that. And yet, ad idem with each other, that the correct thing to do is the economically correct thing to do. Think of it like we're in a pandemic, which we are, and you've got a group of doctors who would share very little in common, but who look at the pandemic and say the correct step to take is X, Y, and Z. Or a group of engineers who look at a building or a bridge and say, okay, to fix this, to repair this, here's the parameters within which we work, and we can agree up to this stage. That's what the economic and financial academic community, and not just in Ireland. We've had people, for example, like Robert Schiller, say that NAMA-type operations are a bad idea. One of the most respected academics in the US. We've had Paul Krugman say that temporary nationalisation of banks may be the only solution. We've had people like Wilhelm Beuter. We've had a whole slew of academic commentary, even from the IMF, the ECB, the OECD, saying, don't overpay, pay market values, let the market deal with the situation, the government steps in afterwards. After that, get out quickly if you're in. Now, the Irish academic community, it is extraordinary that we have been utterly ignored by government. As far as I am aware, not a single one of the leading critics, or even people who signed the letters, have been approached on an official basis to say, okay, if you think you're so smart, come in and have a chat. Tell us what the problems are. The government has been very happy to spend tens of millions of euro on getting advice from international banks, some of whom are themselves bankrupt and being bailed out, about how to ensure that we don't bankrupt the banks. And they've got people like myself, like Carl Whelan, like Valerio Potti, like the other people who signed the letters, Alexander Savage, etc., Gregory Connor, experienced people with practical and academic experience, and they're ignoring that pool of talent and pool of intellect, even if only as a sounding board. So I think we felt, and we have felt as professionals, that there's a professional duty on us to call things as they are, to call it clean, and to make the comments. And if people don't like them, well, that's unfortunate, but that's like, saying, oh, I go to the doctor and blasted, all he said was, you know, stop smoking, take more exercise, and cut out the butter, and your heart will be better. You know, well, I don't believe that. I'm going to do something else, and I'm going to find me somebody from the Irish Smoking Dairy Board, you know, and couch manufacturers who's going to give me an answer that I prefer.